Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Just a quick preview, I guess, for a fight that goes down on Christmas Eve. An early Christmas present. Naoya Inoue defends his undisputed super bantamweight crown against Australian mandatory challenger Sam Goodman. Going into this fight, I think most of us would have rather have seen Inoue fight MJ Akhmadaliev, but for whatever reason that fight is not on the agenda. He's also a mandatory, I believe, for the IBF or WBA, one of the two. But he's also a mandatory, as is Sam Goodman, and Inoue has chosen to go the Sam Goodman route, who is viewed as the lesser challenger, and rightly so in my opinion. However, I have had a look at Sam Goodman over the last week or so, and he's not a terrible fighter by any means. He attained that mandatory status by beating Rashid Aleem back last year, summer of last year. Aleem went into that fight as the favourite, but Goodman was able to essentially outwork Aleem and in spots outbox him. Sam Goodman, for me, is a fighter who can do a variety of different things in there. He's a decent combination puncher, has decent enough speed, decent counter puncher, good jab, good straight punches. But nailing down what his style is a little more tricky. I think he's most effective when he's taking a bit of time, when he's boxing behind the jab and looking for his straight right hand, because he delivers that shot pretty well, pretty quickly, and he spots the counters pretty well. He's pretty decent at picking those sort of shots, reacting to what you're doing, and trying to pick holes in your defense and whatnot. But he's a guy, like I said, who mixes it up. He's not scared to throw combination punches. He's not scared to exchange. He changes levels with his attacks. He switches from boxing to counter-punching to fighting. And because of that, he maintains a pretty decent work rate. Can also fight in and out. Again, he's one of these guys who can do a bit of everything, but for me, I think that is sometimes to his detriment. From looking at his fights, against the likes of TJ Dehaney, against the likes of Aleem, and a few early fights, one thing I notice about Sam Goodman is he's one of those guys who not necessarily admires his work. That's the wrong expression, but he gets too greedy. He'll land a shot and he'll jump in. So he'll land a nice jab, straight right counter. Then he'll jump in and throw a combination going to body to head. In doing so, he leaves himself very open. When he throws those combinations, he really does open his body up and he comes a bit square on. And we saw that early in his career when he got dropped by a guy called Fuse. I think he was a Japanese fighter, southpaw. Got dropped by a straight left hand. And although, Fuse is a southpaw, Goodman for me is open for the straight punches, especially counters. Because when he opens up, he really does. Defense kind of goes out the window a little bit for my liking. But he takes risks in a lot of his fights. And so far in his career, he's managed to overwhelm his opponents when he does that with his work rate and his combination punching with decent speed. So again, I'm looking at Goodman. I see a fighter there who's got some decent skills, but again, he gets too greedy. I don't think his decision making at the elite level is where it needs to be. I don't think his temperament in the ring is where it needs to be. And I don't think his maturity in the ring is where it needs to be against a guy like Inoue who, again, much like Goodman, he can do more than one thing in there. He can walk you down, he can apply pressure, he can work that body, he can counterpunch, he can box behind the jab. But Inoue knows when to employ different tactics throughout a fight. He knows when to employ different tactics, and he'll adjust accordingly. I've not really seen that from Goodman. I've seen Goodman fight a lot on instinct. Like I said, overexcitable. And I think that more than likely will be his undoing. If he fights to his strengths, which in my opinion is for straight punches, is for jab, is for straight right, with counter punching, and good movement as well. He can move his feet pretty well, especially in and out. If he sticks to that style early on especially, I actually do think he can give Inoue some trouble. You know, similar to like, they're different fighters, but similar to how Dehaney did. I could see Goodman having some success. I could see Dehaney maybe taking advantage of Inoue's low lead hand, because sometimes Inoue carries that left hand, the jab hand, pretty low. And I could see Goodman landing the counter overhand right and straight right on Inoue. And I could see him tagging him up at times. But it's when he sets his feet, man, that's when he will be in danger of getting caught by a big overhand, an uppercut, a hook, etc. Goodman is a good fighter, but I look at his fights, I look at some of his performances, and I see a guy who, in my opinion, just isn't quite seasoned enough for this type of fight. I think he's got some interesting attributes. I think he's got some decent skills. He's got, like I said, he's pretty well-rounded, but I don't think he's got the ability or the know-how, the mental know-how of when to apply different techniques throughout a fight, adjusting to what his opponent is doing. You know, it's very off the cuff with Sam Goodman. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that can pose a problem for an opponent, you know, when but against a guy like Inoue who's really good at picking the openings and taking advantage of your mistakes, I think that type of approach is wrong from Sam Goodman. But again, having said that, I think he's a good fighter. Don't be surprised if he makes a few rounds competitive. Don't be surprised if he maybe even wins a couple of rounds. I don't think this guy is going to go in there and get blasted out in a couple of rounds. I do think he'll make a few rounds. I do think he'll ask a couple of questions. And I think overall, he'll probably leave this fight with an enhanced reputation, despite more than likely getting knocked out. And once Inoue does move up, I think Goodman will be right in the mix to maybe get a title, you know? I think he's that sort of guy. He's that sort of guy to where he's good enough to win a world title, but he's not good enough to beat a super champion like Inoue. That's how I kind of see him. But I expect him to make it relatively competitive for a few rounds, maybe 3 or 4 rounds. But I expect him to go out in probably round 7, round 8, round 9. I expect Inoue to get the stoppage. Another thing about Sam Goodman is he's slightly taller than Inoue, but he's actually got slightly less reach. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough fight for him. It's going to be a tough fight, but I think it will be entertaining. I do think it will be entertaining. Goodman, you know, in his career, beat Dehaney, beat Rashid Aleem, he beat Miguel Flores. He's got a few good wins. He's decent. But yeah, Inoue is just way too good as far as I'm concerned. Way too good. Hopefully after this fight, providing Inoue wins, it would be nice for him to stick around and fight Akhmadaliev, his last mandatory. That would be nice, but it doesn't look like we're going to get it. Apparently after this fight, Inoue could very well move up to featherweight and fight in April in America against a Mexican dude called Picasso. So we'll see what happens there. Also, by the way, just a quick one. On the undercard, you've got a guy called Yoshiki Takai. He's defending his WBO bantamweight title. If you haven't seen Takai fight, I've only seen his last 2 fights against Jason Maloney and Daigo Higa. Both of those fights were mad entertaining. The guy takes a lot of risks, both in the Maloney fight and the Higa fight. He kind of gassed out towards the end, making it hard for himself. But both of these last 2 fights of his were really fun. But yeah, Takai, he's fighting on the undercard. He's fighting an unbeaten contender from Thailand. So yeah, check him out as well. He's always in fun fights from what I've seen. But yeah, it's a Christmas treat. Boxing on Boxing Day. Who would have thought it? But yeah, share what's below. Beanie Guy Del Boy. Peace.